Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 341. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the End Squad. But what's going on, Daniel?
What's going on, guys?
Our usual guest, Gail. She's not going to make it this evening. She had a prior engagement. For those who are new to the show, first of all, before I get things, I want to really thank. Last time you heard us was a couple of weeks ago. Did a all ladies episode of the show. Ladies Love Boxing Round 5. I want to give a big shout out to everybody, to all the women who joined us on the show. Sadat in the ring with Christine, Nika, Minnie Larry. I said it a couple of weeks ago and I'll reiterate it again. It's one of the I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. They challenged me, but it was one of the best episodes of the Pound for Pound Box Report in a long time. For those who are new to the show, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, and blog/website discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we'll talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. You want to find out all information, please just go to the website. The link is p4pboxingreport.com. And repeat that, p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find most of our prior episodes. You also find links to where to find us. Follow us all over social media, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Tumblr, on IG. Still having a little bit of hiccups there with Facebook, so I'm not going to promote that. You also find links to where to find us all over. Find the show all over the podcast realm, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Spotify, be it Anchor, anywhere and everywhere else in between. Links to where you can donate. Got a Passion PayPal donation link. Let donation be a destination. If you got a little pocket change in hand that you could spare, shoot some coin to Pound for Pound Box Report. It'll help the overall production behind the scenes. Last but certainly not least, I am a coach for Beachbody. I am a coach for Beachbody. If you're interested in anything of the programs that are associated with Beachbody on Demand, you're looking to get yourself into some shape with the holiday season approaching us, so you won't put on too many pounds, please catch up. Please look for my coaching link towards the bottom portion of the page. If you want to participate in one of my Let's Build Together challenges, I plan to start one at the beginning of November. If you want to take advantage of the 2-week trial, and that is for 2 weeks on Beachbody on Demand, you get free access to any and all programs on the site, be it the bar blend, be it the morning meltdown, be it the 6 weeks of the work, be it the 645 program that's getting ready to drop for the masses this fall, be it the old school P90X series 1, 2, 3, the Insanity and Insanity Asylum series, or the boxing based program, 10 rounds. You can get free 2 weeks of free access, all of that. Just take advantage of that. Please just go to Beachbody on Demand via my coaching link on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Let's get things going. Daniel, since we was away for 2 weeks, I may split these fights up between you and myself. Let's go with what just took place this past weekend and the return of one Mikey Garcia, 4-time division champ. There's been questions, and Gail has alluded to this in previous episodes about Mikey Garcia, and she raised a very good point over the weekend on Boxing Twitter, and that is that Mikey Garcia is a guy who is very good at boxing, but she has questioned in the past whether he has the passion for the sport. Kind of played itself out as he fought unheralded Sandor Martin, and upset. Martin didn't just beat Garcia, he thoroughly outboxed Mikey Garcia, who seemed disinterested the entire fight. Kind of ran away with it, Daniel. I wasn't able to see it all the way through live. I've seen it. I've seen most of the fight since. What do you make of Garcia in the aftermath? To me, he has to have a serious look in the mirror and raise some questions. He said after the fight, he's felt that he won. I just don't see it. Where'd he get that from? Is it from? Okay. Is it time? Is it going too far to question whether Mikey Garcia really wants to fight anymore?
No, because it's been a question for at least half a decade. I know. I think ever since you started this program, there has been questions regarding this when it comes to Mike Garcia, and that was when he was a featherweight. That's it. In case people don't know, the situation is Mikey Garcia doesn't really want to be a boxer. He wants to be a cop. He's gone through the police academy. He can pretty much go to any police department near his hometown and serve as a cop. That's what he actually wants to do. Boxing is something that he can do and can do pretty well. What happens, unfortunately, is if you're just doing something that you do really, really well, it it's pretty easy to fall into apathy. And that's what happened in this fight. You Mikey probably figured he could just show up on heralded opponent, not really taken seriously. He would just do what he normally does and leave. Unfortunately, he caught the wrong person who was actually motivated to go out and take the fight to Mikey Garcia, and who did. Now, it is about time he himself has to sit down into this, because between the jumps in weight class and between trying to get some of the big fights, like the main one he was trying to go was Pacquiao, and for the time being, that looks to be out of reach. He has to look to sit down in the mirror, and it's not a situation where he needs the money. From everybody's understanding, he is not a big spender, but he has to really sit down, him, his brother, his father, and have to say whether it's actually worth it anymore if your heart's not into it.
Sorry, I was on mute. And the thing for me, if he's going to continue, he has to sit him and his team, his brother, right? They have to sit down and decide what weight does he want to compete. It's obvious at this point that he's not a welterweight. He never was, right? I seriously wonder if he's even a junior welterweight. Well, let me take that back. I don't think he can make lightweight anymore at this point because he's too far gone from 135 pounds. 140 seems to be the best weight for me, but does he have it in him? Does he have the discipline, Daniel, to work his butt into serious shape and get down to junior welterweight?
As far as the discipline, yes, I think he does. I even think I go further than you in that sense. I think he has the discipline to go back down to lightweight. Discipline is one thing, the heart is another. That's the key part of it. He has to really, like I said, he has to really sit down, and I think he's with Richard Schaefer. Then him, Richard Schaefer, they have to sit down and look at the actual options on the table. Because if you're just gonna be going out there trying to get big money fights, this hurt your stock pretty badly. And the big money fights are going to become fewer and far between. Not to mention that the people that are maybe coming up, or whether you go up to 140 or you try to lightweight, is not old cats. It's not Jorge Linares anymore. When that fight was probably the best fight to make between a Mikey and lightweight, it's all the young cats. Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Jojo Diaz. Those are the people that are waiting Mikey Garcia if he goes down to lightweight. Well, 40, yeah, Josh Taylor. So discipline, I think he has the discipline. It's just mainly if he has actually the heart to do it.
Going to split these next couple of fights on this undercard up. I'll start with the fight featuring Jesse Bam Rodriguez. We've mentioned him briefly here on the show. I think it's time that we start featuring him a little bit more. Bam, 21-year-old southpaw from San Antonio. Uh, he was originally supposed to fight Esteban Bermudez, who is the WBA regular champion at 108 pounds. That fight was scratched because essentially because Rodriguez never fully signed on to the fight, and he was ordered to fight the super champion at 108 pounds, Koiguchi, earlier. So that fight kind of fell through. Instead, Rodriguez fought a guy by the name of Burgos, and he stopped him in four, KO'd him. And the reason I say that we should start featuring Bam Rodriguez more is the it's a serious. We talk about Boots Ennis, right? We talk about Virgil Ortiz at welterweight. We talk about the other up and coming prospects slash contenders in the sport, particularly stateside. I think it's time that we put Bam Rodriguez in that mix. He's a champion in waiting, Daniel. The wonderful thing about him, he's so advanced from a technical standpoint, and in terms of his boxing brain. He's kind of a mini Lomachenko, dare I say. His ability to move, switch angles, pivot, confuse guys from the southpaw stance, and do so offensively, having speed and power. And after a little bit of a slow start against Burgos, he really poured it on. The last couple of rounds ended up finishing him off. And I'll say it right here. I think he's a champion in waiting. He didn't get kind of the title fight here, but I think in 2022, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to win a world title. And I don't care if it's at 108 pounds or 112 pounds. I think he's that good. I think he's one of the future stars of the lower weight divisions. And if you were not able to see that fight, you may be able to catch it on YouTube. If not, next time you hear about Jesse Bam Rodriguez fighting, do yourself a favor and please check him out. Whatever network he appears. I think he's that good, loaded with potential. Also on that Mikey Garcia card, Daniel, you had Elwin Soto, who WBO champion at 108 pounds, right? Fought a guy by the name of Jonathan Gonzalez, a former world title challenger at 112. And I wrote about, I did partially, I did some behind the scenes work for the intro of that recap over on Three Kings Boxing. Please check out threekingsboxing.com, your pure, unadulterated source for boxing information. And there were warning signals, Daniel, when it came to Soto. When he won the title in controversial fashion against Acosta in 2019, the ending was suspect, but throughout he showed that he had potential to be a really good fighter. The problem is, in his three subsequent title defenses, he looked mid, right? Very, very mid. He wasn't impressive at all. Gonzalez was a guy who moves a lot, but when he fought Kosei Tanaka was able to catch up to him and stop them with body shots. I thought Soto had it in him to do the same, Daniel, but he couldn't catch up to him that much. Gonzalez did a lot of moving, which is what he's known for. And whenever Soto was able to land shots on him, he wasn't able to hurt him. So just like Mikey Garcia, that was an upset. So was this fight between Gonzalez and Soto. As Gonzalez, he pulled off the surprise, and he's now the WBO champion at 108 pounds.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, this could actually be a situation where Soto may actually consider moving up, because what's starting to happen is, he can sit down. Yes, he can have power, but and as if his last fight's shown, if you get a guy that's quick, it may tire him out a little bit. So his power is not there as much. So going back down the weight is just asking for more problems because you're asking them for guys for more speed. So maybe a move to 112 would actually benefit him in a way where he can work more on his power and he can relax a little bit more because it could also be a situation where he could just be weight training. And if that's the case, then yeah, the move is necessary.
We'll see where he goes, and we'll see what Gonzalez does now that he has a belt. I ain't gonna lie, I suspect that he may not have a long reign as a champion because, as I said before, the Tanaka fight shows some obvious weaknesses, exposed some weaknesses within him, especially when it comes to body shots. Could have a rematch. We'll see where it goes. We'll keep you updated. Um, Let's move on to from that card um, to a fight that took place last week on Friday. Um, Emmanuel Navarrete, we've talked about it before, former champion at 122 pounds. He's moved up to 126 and won a second world title. Has made I think this is either the second or third defense of the WBO belt at 126 pounds. He fought former world title challenger Joet Gonzalez, Daniel, and Gonzalez was predictably the underdog, but give him credit for fighting hard throughout. It turned out to be basically a bloodbath, right? Gonzalez was cut, right eye, multiple cuts around both eyes. Navarrete, he received facial damage as well. This was back and forth trench warfare. Highly entertaining fight over in Phoenix, and Navarrete won. But were you surprised that Joet was able to get off with so many punches, that he was able to stand in there and fight throughout against the hard punching Navarrete?
I have to give it to the kid. That kid has heart because he took a beating from Navarrete. Now, can you say that this actually raises some question as far as Navarrete's power at featherweight? It can, because this is his third fight, and the explosiveness that he's shown at 122 pounds isn't as evident when it comes to featherweight. But what is the activity. What is the work rate that he's going with. It was an excellent fight when it came into gauging motion, gauging the workflow, Navarrete landing combinations. I'm actually surprised the fight didn't end a little bit sooner because of that, of how Joet was getting beat up. But you got to give him the heart. Now, this has been the issue now with Navarrete because he's also been inkling that he may actually have to move up. That he feels that featherweight's draining him. So this could be either, this would have been probably his last or second to last fight as champion. What you have to now look into is this now going to be a situation where is it going to be a law of diminishing returns with Navarrete? Because like I said, he has the skills, he has the work rate, he has a decent hand speed, and like I said, great activity. But as he goes up, the power that shocked the world, the power that impressed us when he upset Isaac Dogbe, it's not showing up as much. Or at least it's not showing up in knockout power. It's showing up in attrition.
I think with Navarrete, the other problem is a certain lack of discipline in terms of his nutrition. I was watching the pre-fight stuff, and Navarrete basically admitted that he eats what he wanted. I think that plays a role in the weight difficulties. He shouldn't have this many. He shouldn't have this kind of problems making 126 when he just got there. I think that he may have to hire a nutritionist at some point to keep his weight down, because you would think just by natural, because he is so active, that he would have an easier time making the weight. The fact that he still has, the fact that you hear rumors of him having difficulties making 126 pound yes, he's a growing kid, but I also think that he needs to get a little bit more strict in terms of his diet. If you were quickly before we move on, if you were, who would you like to see him fight next? I know. Would you like to see him stay at 126 and see if he can get any significant fights there at feather, or do you think he would want to go at 130? Because I've heard him folks from his camp talking about a fight against Oscar Valdez, a guy that seemingly everybody wants to fight, um, in and around that featherweight, junior lightweight area.
If it's featherweight, the granted right now the only fight that I would want to see him at featherweight is Gary Russell Jr. For both of their sakes, we have to see Gary Russell Jr. actually challenged. And Grant, I actually would like to see Gary Russell Jr. fight. I do not, I do not like this plan of him only fighting during Black History Month, honestly. And at 130, I know we're going to talk about it in the preview, but there's options. It's not just Valdez. Like I said, there's two good people in his state in the Rock top ranked stable right there that he could fight pretty well. So there are options available for him. If there's no way to make the Garusa fight, and I know we're dealing with PBC versus top rank, I would wait. Then I would wait to see what the decision's going to be next week, who comes out on top, because that'll help gauge what your decision's going to be.
Quick comment here. I want to thank Ivan DC 20 for joining us in the chat. He says, I'm going to put it up for everyone here. He says, I agree. He, in terms of, I believe you're talking about Navarrete, doesn't have the same discipline that Canelo has, for example. Being a world champion, you have to always be in shape. And after camp, you have to be in fight shape. Um, he also says, in other words, always be ready. Yes, he says he's talking about Navarrete. Let's move on to look. We was off last week, and during the last episode of the show, right? We did a big preview. Myself and the ladies did a big preview of the trilogy between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. They fought right. Exciting fight, full of knockdowns. Fury put Wilder down in the third. Wilder responded in kind, put Fury down twice in round four. But after that, Fury really took over. Um, he wasn't as wild. He began to get the jab going, began to control and punish Wilder from that point on. Give kudos to Wilder for taking a beating. He got mad that he wasn't able to, after the last fight, for essentially uh, mad at Britain for not giving him the opportunity to go out on his shield. He went out on his shield this time as he was battered right from round fifth, five, six on until the end of the fight in round 11 when Fury just took him out. Um, I hear calls that this was a quote unquote great fight, Daniel, one of the greatest fights in recent heavyweight memory. I disagree on both, right? I don't think it was a great fight. It had great moments. The action was too sloppy throughout the large portions of the bout for me. Um, I wouldn't put up there with the greatest fights in history either. I'll get to that a little bit later, but your overall assessment now that we had, look, what, a week and a half or so to digest what went down on the what went down a couple of, what went down in Las Vegas.
Well, first, we probably have to acknowledge that heavyweights in almost all aspects are going to be judged differently than other fighters. Because if you were looking at this from a technical standpoint to see what your ring generalship is, Yeah, it was not going to be. It wasn't the most spectacular fight in that sense, but it got elevated by the fact that celebrities came out, the hype package that came in when Wilder and Fury got introduced. Which, by the way, shout out to Big E from WWE for putting out that package, and it had moments, and it was some scary moments. You could feel some apathy around 3 when Fury scored the first knockdown, because then to go from that where you're feeling, oh, it's going to be a quick night, Fury's going to end this next round, to Wilder scoring 2 knockdowns, one knockdown that's already a point of controversy in some circles in boxing for saying it's a long count, but that upped the drama. Did it change the fact that from rounds 5 through 10, Fury executed the game plan he used in the second fight perfectly? No, it didn't change that. But what also happened is Wilder was hurting Fury in some instances as he was getting exchanges. He landed some uppercuts, he landed some straight rights, and you could tell Fury felt those. What probably makes this and highlighted to a lot of people when you say fight of the year or like one of the best heavyweight fights into it is first the personal stakes involved between Fury and Wilder, and second, it proved 2 things when it comes to Deontay Wilder. I've been harping on this when it comes to Deontay Wilder, that he knows he can be a more versatile boxer. And that first round, where he just didn't try to go straight with the right hand, actually establishing distance, actually starting with jabs to the body, befuddling Fury for like the first 2 rounds in that sense, shows that he can learn to be a boxer, not just be a puncher. So that gives credit a little bit to Malik Scott. I know Mark Breland probably said the same thing, but there is something to be said where you can hear the same thing, but if it comes from a new voice, it sounds different. And we have to give credit to Wilder in this sense. This fight, more than anything, it was him proving to the world and more likely to himself that he wanted to go out on his shield. Even though on the second fight, Mark Breland ended it the way he did was the right thing to do, he at least proved it to himself that, and he proved it to a lot of people who were clowning him, that, yeah, he went out of his shield, that he is a warrior. And yes, it took a week for him to say it, but you know what? He at least paid homage to the night and congratulated Fury. And we have to give out to this, and this is probably one of the best points I'm probably going to make here when it comes into this trilogy. I do not think that you could get what out of Tyson Fury, what Deontay Wilder brought out of Tyson Fury with Anthony Joshua. If Fury would have fought Joshua instead of Wilder, I don't think you would see this Fury, this complete of a fighter. Deontay Wilder brought that out of Tyson Fury, not Anthony Joshua, not even the prospect of Anthony Joshua. So these two are going to be tied together, whether like it or not. And hell, in a couple of years, you never know. They might go touring.
All that is true. However, Wilder took tremendous punishment in these last 2 fights. These last, 18 rounds total. The question becomes, or one of the questions that arises is, look, he there was a lot of questions about there was a lot of issues about his training, right? And that he didn't run and all that. He supposedly did everything right this fight, and yet we still saw what happened. Given the damage that he took, second fight and third, how much of a future does he have really, from a mental and physical standpoint?
Mental, it'll. I think he'll probably recover from a lot better from this than the second fight because you're not seeing like excuses coming out left and right when it comes into it. Wilder said pretty much, Fury was the better man. He beat me. But as far as physically, we have to. There's not a lot of fighters out there that have both the skill set and the size of a Tyson Fury that can bother Wilder in the heavyweight division right now. Joshua is bigger, but as we've seen, he's flawed. Dillian Whyte, bigger, even more flawed than Joshua. And then after that, Andy Ruiz, weight issues will always play a factor. Usyk will be smaller, but is a lot faster. You won't have the leaning problems that you would have with Fury, but you will still have the quickness problems. He will still outbox you. But even then, like against the majority of those fighters outside of Usyk, you can still give Wilder a chance, especially if he continues with Malik. If Malik Scott continues making sure to add elements to his game, don't just stop with a jab to the body. Add more of the left hook. Add more of the right uppercut. Show the versatility where at that point other fighters can no longer look at you as a one-trick pony. That already should be the case after this fight, but there's range out there, but I would probably say hold off a little bit, get your rest. This was a tough trilogy, and he'll be, like I said, he'll be back.
And finally, I mean, one of the main undercard bout I want to focus on, Daniel, is Edgar Berlanga getting a lot of hype from Top Rank. Also getting a lot of attention because not just his punching power, but his because of his mouth as well. Kind of a lightning rod, either you like him or you hate him, right? All of his previous bouts were by knockout, minus his last fight against, I think it's Nicholson, where he went the distance. Well, fought a guy, former world challenger by the name of Coceres, right? And I think for the very first time, Berlanga dealt with some adversity, injured his arm. I think in the third round, turned out it was a torn bicep, left arm, I believe. But the other thing that was a little bit eyebrow raising was he got knocked down for the first time of his career. Have we seen finally Mr. Berlanga get humbled, even in victory?
Hope so. I really, really hope so, because the kid has a lot of potential. Not only as far as the skill set, as far as star power. You saw how what Top Rank was able to do, just building up in that little case when it comes into Kissimmee, showing the Puerto Rican crowd. So he has a following. There is a following there, but he needed this. He did need this. He needed to be shown that, yes, I beat the smaller fringes of the super middleweight division. Now that I'm reaching the fringes of the contenders, it's going to be a lot tougher. I can't just blitz my way through it, because we all know who sits on the top of that mountain. And even though he wanted to talk game, he is nowhere near ready to face one Canelo Alvarez. So,
oh no, absolutely not.
No. But he was already
talking crazy.
Canelo. He was already talking crazy.
Yeah, he's a long way from fight Canelo. If he'll ever get good enough to think about getting in the ring with the likes of Canelo Alvarez, I agree with you that he should. This is a learn. This fight was a teachable moment for him. We'll see how he develops in the aftermath of this. if he is the stuff that he claims himself to be, um, he should be better from this. But yeah, he needed this punch. He needed to get punched in the mouth, take a few licks to the face, and he got put on his butt uh, just to show himself that he may not be what he thinks he is at this point. Absolutely. So yeah, this is something was needed for him. And hopefully he'll see that long term. Let's move on to again in the last episode. Read some more comments here from Ivan DC. We also want to thank Rafael of Velasco Jr. for joining us. Ivan DC says here in the chat, we put this up, Daniel. He said, I've always thought that Wilder would have been a much better boxer if he had left his hometown. That's an interesting observation. Knowing Tuscaloosa isn't a boxing community, he was only going to grow so much. That's an interesting observation. I kind of agree with you there. Ivan also says he could have left his hometown at least for training camps. Maybe go to LA with Roach or Oakland with Virgil Hunter. Just going somewhere with a world class trainer would have changed a lot in him. Interesting. There's a parallel between what you just said and what we're going to talk about in the news segment as well regarding another prominent heavyweight. Um, Raphael says Berlanga is good for U.S. boxing. Everyone goes through troubles and tribulations. He's good for boxing in terms of marketing. We will see in terms of fighting ability and fighting skill. That's still yet to be determined. Talking is one thing. You have to be able to back it up. If you don't, you're just huffing and puffing hot air, selling wolf tickets. You got to be able to back it up in the ring. So we'll see going forward. Your thoughts on what Ivan had to said about Wilder making him. It's a mistake. It was a mistake on Wilder's part, um, keeping everything close to the vest in Tuscaloosa and not going abroad, if you will.
I've been saying it, I think, ever since the first Luis Ortiz fight, that I think that a change was actually going to be needed. And I mentioned maybe he should go to a Robert Garcia or maybe go to a Joel Diaz and learn when it comes to be a defensive fighter in that sense, or Joe Goosen. So yes, I agree in the sense that he could have learned a little bit, but that's one of the things I think he had to learn the hard way. He did surround himself with a lot of yes men, and it looked like he was feeding into that. Malik Scott doesn't look like he's in that fold, like he's going to be a yes man. He looks like he is holding Deontay accountable. The thing about now is you have to get him out of his comfort zone. Yeah, he spent pretty much the entirety of this in his property in Tuscaloosa, but at a certain point, you have to go you have to go out of your comfort zone. You have to go places where it'll help you. Like one of the Big Bear. Big Bear would have been perfect. Even if you're not going to Abel's camp. Big Bear for Wilder would have been perfect because it would have been taught him endurance. Running all those miles in that area. And that probably would have helped when Fury was leaning on him and not trying to take some energy. So there is a lot of valid arguments there.
Again, I want to thank Ivan and Raphael for checking us out. If you're listening to episode 341 Pound for Pound Boxing Report, if you're checking the show out on YouTube, please make sure to hit that like button. Also hit the subscribe button if you're checking us out on the other podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. Please make sure you subscribe to us there. And make sure to leave a review, particularly on Apple Podcasts. 5-star review will get read on the show. The reason I made, and shout out to you also, Ophno Molly. Thank you for listening. The reason I made note to feature Ivan's comment here and made it public here for YouTube followers because the fact that he mentioned Wilder possibly moving outside of Tuscaloosa, it falls right in line into where I want to go in terms of our first news story, Daniel, and that is news that broke over the past 24 to 48 hours regarding Anthony Joshua. Again, I'll refer back to the last episode, the Ladies Love Round 5 episode. We did a preview of Fury Wilder 3, but we also did a recap, heavy recap of Joshua's loss to Usyk on September 25th, right? Uh, a question I raised to the ladies, particularly to Christine in the ring with Christine, who's a boxing coach herself. The question I raised to her was, in the aftermath, uh, do you think that Joshua? Do you think it's time for Joshua to get rid of his trainer Robert McCracken? You heard a lot of that. You heard that sentiment from plenty of fans in the aftermath, and it looks like that. It looks like Joshua is indeed doing that. Um, to your question, Olaf, I'll put it here. Uh, is Gail going to join? No, she's not. As I said at the beginning of the show, she had a previous engagement, and unfortunately, she could not make it this evening. Hopefully, she'll be back on the next episode. But to the point about Joshua, over the past 24 to 48 hours, um, Joshua has been seen here stateside, has visited multiple gyms. I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Um, he was seen at Virtual Hunters gym out there in Northern California. He was seen over at Eddie Reynoso's camp in San Diego. And he was spotted at Ronnie Shields' training camp in Houston. Not only was he seen there, Monday, and this episode is being recorded on October the 20th. On October 18th and 19th, he worked out at Shields' facility in Houston, Texas. Shields was a guest on the Boxing Voice last night on the 19th, in which he talked about that session with Joshua. And two things I got note from that, Daniel. One, Joshua's he's on the active recruiting trail looking for a new trainer, though it's not been officially announced. That's number one. Two, based on what Shields talked about, could he be the leading candidate to be Joshua's new trainer? To give some insight, he talked about, he expressed how Joshua understands the call, the criticism that he received from that fight with Usyk, namely that he doesn't have a mean streak. He wasn't aggressive enough, right? He said that for the rematch, he's going to be a dog, quote unquote, that he's going to be more aggressive in his rematch. And he asked Shields to basically show him how to be the best dog that he can be. That lets me know that Shields is definitely in the running to be his new trainer. I say all that to say here, your thoughts on Joshua looking for a new trainer, and if he indeed hires Ronnie Shields, how do you think he would fare with AJ?
As far as the recruiting trip, it's a good thing. Just like I said, like I haven't mentioned that has done water. Joshua had to do it. If he have had to do it, because this was the second time that a fighter that was smaller, quicker, faster hands was not only got to him, but got at him in a way that you would not have figured that those type of other heavyweights did. Now, Andy Ruiz caught him with the hand speed. With Usyk, it was the overall skill set. Now, going into the list, because at the Reynoso Shields, if you go with Shields, it's a very interesting in a way, because then you have to judge him by his fighters. Obviously, the biggest one, probably right at the top of my head, is going to be Maul Charlo. And he does have a mean streak in many, many ways as far as trying to get the punch. The thing is, though, is can Ronnie Shields deal with that mentally? Because one thing that happened, and I forgot who pointed it out to me, but he made a good point. Whereas the Dillian Whyte fight made him a bit cautious because Whyte hurt him to the body. He got even more cautious at the Klitschko fight because of the knockdowns that he suffered. And he went full blown into it after the Reeds knocked him out. It seems like every time he faced adversity, he decided to back down a little bit, try to be more of a boxer. And in his case, it does not work to go full blown in that boxer, not with his frame, his body type. What he needs is a little bit more aggression. Somebody like Shields can have it going in with it. I would say not does stop with Shields. I mentioned Robert Garcia. Robert Garcia could do it. He could bring it out of him. Manny Robles could bring it out of him. We've seen what he's done with Reese, but never really count out the Reynosos.
Do you think it would be a little bit odd? Excuse me for interrupting. That he would be trained by Reynoso, given that Reynoso also trains Ruiz.
It depends how you work the machinations right now, because they're in two different worlds right now. It looks like Andy Ruiz is leaning more towards the WBC front, and Joshua is right now focused when it comes into Usyk. We've had this scenario before. It hasn't, granted, it has not worked out the best sentiment when it comes to the trainers. Like we mentioned, like Sergey Dobrychenko and Danny Jacobs when they had to fight, and they both had the same trainer. The situation's probably gonna play out. Depends on how it's looked at, because you know what the Reynoso camp's gonna bring as far as discipline. Manny Robles demands similar things. Joe Diaz will demand similar things. Ronnie Shields probably won't be as demanding in that area. He'll probably be more of a mental area. I would probably say this would be on the top. Like right now, Ronnie Shields, because he has been working out. Ronnie Shields, the Reynosos, and probably in the next couple of days, if he's going further west, I would not be surprised if Robert Garcia and Virgil Hunter get added to the list. Because mentally, I think Hunter is the type of fighter that Virgil can work with. Because all these other fighters outside of Ward have been guys that have been more punchers before, and he tried to mold them into boxers, and it didn't really work out in that area because they needed to be more punchers in that area. He could probably do what he does with Andre Ward with Anthony Joshua. So this is going to be interesting which way it goes, and if he and also would be interesting to see if he decides after all of this, I'll just stick with McCracken at the end. Who knows?
I don't mind the change. As a matter of fact, one of the things she was also disclosed to Ness over there, the boxing voice, is that when he was asked about who he's going to keep with him moving forward, Joshua did not mention McCracken. So I think he's gone now. Reynoso, one of his main things is technique and in terms of keeping in shape. I don't think that. Well, let me take that back, because Joshua does have conditioning issues, so I'm gonna change my point there. The technical skills, because Joshua has a good jab, but there are other aspects of that department that he's lacking in. I just want to see Joshua with a pit bull mentality for once, because in the fight with Usyk, when he was on the front foot briefly in the middle rounds, right? That's where he had his best success, and he's going to have to do similar things in order to win a rematch. He's not going to, I don't think, outbox Usyk. He has to find a way to cut off that ring and get to Usyk with power punches, right? I'm not mad at Shields based on the discussions, based on what he disclosed to the boxing voice. If Joshua were to land with him, any option at this point, I would dig, because what we saw against Usyk, if he sticks with McCracken, I don't think there's no hell of a way he has a chance on beating Usyk again. We'll keep you updated here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report when there's an official announcement. Any further developments in terms of what Anthony Joshua is doing right now in this uh, uh, active recruiting pitch, active recruitment of a new trainer following his defeat at the hands of Alexander Usyk. Let's move on to a couple of other stories here. Dillian Whyte, it was announced today, Daniel. Again, I wrote about this with Three Kings. Dillian Whyte has withdrawn from his bout against Otto Wallin. The fight was going to take place on October 30th. Whyte citing a shoulder injury. Boxing fans know his frustration trying to get a shot at the WBC title. Whyte been mandatory contender for a good while. In an ironic twist, could the fact that he has withdrawn from the fight against Wallin could that finally be the door, the window for a shot at the WBC title, Daniel, and fight Fury?
We have to see how that shapes up because it's been true. Dillian Whyte has pretty much fought at least 6 or 7 eliminator bouts in a row. Granted, he lost one of them, and then
Yeah.
and then he wound up ethering Povetkin. Thank you for that, Dillian, by the way. But we have to see how the WBC shapes things because right now, even in the new rankings, remember they still have Wilder number 1, and they have Andy Ruiz number 2. So he may also have played himself out of that picture as far as trying to be an interim champion, and we also have to take into the account Fury. Fury mentally is loose cannon when it comes to situations like this. The Wilder fight, he pretty much had no choice. An arbitrator told him you had no choice. And once that was done and Anthony Joshua got tied up with Usyk, there was no other fight he could do. This sense, in this way, is going to be very, very telling because, pardon me a moment. Sorry about that. But what's probably going to be telling is how is he going to react at saying like, oh, now you're mandated to fight Dillian Whyte. He's talked openly before that he's willing to drop that belt. Fury's willing to drop that belt. And the ranking stand, Dillian Whyte might even just be left out in the clear. Then Wilder has a chance to regain the belt against Ruiz. So that may wind up backfiring him. It could also wind up backfiring him in a way where the WBC might even say, okay, you're backing out of this fight. You know what? We're gonna give Wallin the shot because he did fairly good against Fury when they fought before.
That would be messed up. They give him a shot when Whyte is the interim champion.
Yeah, we're talking about the WBC here. You have seen worse from them, unfortunately. But that's the area, and not to mention there's at least in the UK there's a lot of people that think that Dillian is not hurt, that he's trying to make this power play to force the WBC to make him the full mandatory for Fury. It's a smart thing to do. If you're trying to force yourself to get a shot, it can backfire. But you know what? He deserves it in the way. Like 6 or 7 eliminator fights in a row, pretty much. And you deserve an actual world title shot. You almost got it against Joshua. Now whether it's against Fury or whether you may want to fight either Wilder or Ruiz for the vacant belt, at least to get a shot. I'll commend Dillian Whyte on that. At least he's trying to get a shot.
Speaking of a drama, Daniel, there is the drama that is um, Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos. Um, they were supposed to fight earlier this spring, pushback. It's going to fight this summer, pushback. It's going to fight October 4th, pushback. It's going to supposed to fight October 16th, pushback. Um, on the undercard of the Garcia fight with Martin, it was announced that not the undercard of yeah, on the undercard of Garcia and Martin, it was announced that we finally have a date for that fight, November 27th in New York City. I'm not even going to ask you in terms of any predictions right now. My simple question is, do you think this fight will actually happen on the 27th of November, or will we have something that will creep up again and push this fight even further?
Uh, First, we're no longer dealing with Triller here. Uh, I know me, Joe, and Francis, we actually had to discuss the legal ramifications of the entire scope that Triller did in the lead up to this. This is now an Eddie Hearn production, which is why it's on the zone. And that gives you a little bit more security because think about it, it's the fight is going back to the Hulu Theater in MSG, the place that Triller technically got kicked out of as far as for boxing. Now,
Get some backstory on that for those who don't know.
all right, pardon a moment. Yes, okay. Well, originally Triller had was proposing a series of fights in the Hulu Theater. The Michael Hunter card was the first one among them. But they've also tied it in with their other major product, which is a versus. The first versus that was out there was the versus between the Locks and Dipset. And the way that started, even though it's probably one of the best verses they've done, the way it started, it's just a complete mess. Apparently pissed off the Garden enough where they said, okay, you can't do both anymore. You can't do boxing and versus battles doing this anymore because logistically you've proven now that you can't do this clean. So pick one or the other. And apparently Triller at that point decided to pick up the ball, go home, and try to go to Barclays. They did run to bring the card. They did run the fight card that actually turned out to be pretty decent for a small New York club style card. And they had the verses with KRS-One and Big Daddy Kane.
Which was awesome.
Yes, it was. South Bronx. And but in that sense, then now that left the Hulu Theater open again. And MSG and Matchroom and The Zone, they've always had good relations. So it's easy to come back and say, we're going to have the same fight, but this time we're running it. And MSG's probably like, we know you're competent. You can run it, especially in that weekend, because I think that's either Thanksgiving weekend or right after Thanksgiving weekend. So there might be a pretty decent crowd in that area.
So hopefully the fight will come off. Indirectly associated with Teofimo, the dust up that he got into with one Devin Haney. Haney is looking for a fight. Looks like he's going to fight in December. Went back and forth on Twitter with Jojo Diaz, trying to entice him into that December 3rd date. Nothing has been announced. Haney said on social media that he has sent Diaz an official contract for that fight. Well, anyway, back to Lopez. Those two went at it face to face, basically argued back and forth. Look, they supposedly tried to negotiate a fight unsuccessfully, right? What do you think about that dust up between those two that took place ringside, Daniel?
Well, first, good promotion for Teofimo. Get yourself more known to the DAZN audience. Introduce yourself if you haven't been introduced yourself in that area. And we have to remember the point of contention, not only because they're the same weight class. There's the concept of the WBC title. Now, obviously, Teofimo and his camp are making the case that they're technically the undisputed champion at lightweight because of how Loma was still considered a champion or a franchise in that area. But the WBC, I think, actually said that Haney's the actual champion at lightweight. So there's that point of contention. So it adds up in that area. I don't know how fast they can make the fight if they make the fight, because obviously, more than likely, because of the Ryan Garcia situation, more than likely it's going to be Haney versus Diaz, and in December. And at that point, you know that if Teofimo beats Kambosos, there is that little bit of business that Top Rank wants him to deal with in that Loma rematch. So it's good to talk in that area. This is the division where it's been a lot of talking. Remember, it's not only him. I mentioned Ryan Garcia, Jojo Diaz, Tank. So
Tank was going to fight Rolly Romero in December, by the way, for those who don't know.
Yes. So there's a lot of players in that division. And quite frankly, it's good because they've been hyped up. They've been mentioned as like being the next four horsemen of the or the next four kings of the sport. And we know the last four kings were in the mid division: Hearns, Leonard, Durant, Hagler. If you're gonna live up to those names, you better start not only talking but showing up in the fight, because you can talk all day but make the fights.
Yes, a lot of talking, a lot of barking, a lot of woofing back and forth. Has it resulted in any kind of fight? No, but let's hope this time it will. There's a lot of work to be done. Teofimo got of course, fight and beat Kambosos in November in NYC. Haney has a fight in December. Let's hope, fingers crossed, that should they get by that we can finally see all this woofing, which is getting annoying in one way. Let's hope it produces an actual fight. I just leave it at that. Let's hope it produces an actual fight between the two at some point in 2022. Let's move on here to preview some fights. If you want to talk about, I'll leave it up to you, Daniel. You got that Bridger White fight between Oscar Rivas and Rozicki. Bridger White is a newly created division. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a division without much substance. I feel I understand the rationale behind it. I just don't agree with it. If you have any thoughts on that bout, WBC quote unquote Bridger White title, I'll give you the opportunity to talk about it now, Daniel.
The fight itself, no. I don't have a concept of it, although I will say this when it comes to the concept of Bridger White. Like I said, I understand where the WBC is going with this, because technically the Olympics has the same situation where you have heavyweight and then you have super heavyweight. And in that sense, you can see, but you can't see where they're going with it. But however, when you look at heavyweight history, they all haven't been Vladimir Klitschko, Tyson Furies, Anthony Joshua size people. They've been most of the size of, at least weight wise, of a Deontay Wilder, of a Mike Tyson, of an Evander Holyfield, of a Muhammad Ali. So historically, it doesn't make sense. I get it from a scientific standpoint, but Please, Suleiman, just end this. I know I know you guys need sanctioning fees, but please end this.
Right, right. Let's move on to talk about the main fight here, and that is Jamel Herring putting up his WBO 130-pound title against former featherweight champion, mandatory contender, his mandatory challenger, Shakur Stevenson. Look, I'll say here, we've been in a lot of private chat rooms, right? Talking about this fight. There seems to be a groundswell of support for Herring. I think others have Shakur as the favorite. He's getting paid more in this fight. But from my readings, from folks I follow, uh, uh, there seems to be some questions raised about Shakur, um, whether he is disciplined enough, whether he's struggling to make weight, whether he really likes to fight, given his I can't pronounce the South African's name fighter he fought, given how he looked very, very hesitant, very passive in that win. Um, just a few days away, Daniel, the fight's going to take place in ATL on ESPN Plus, I believe. Your breakdown.
Yes, like I said, I can confirm. Like I said, with Mike, we have been in private chats with one Mr. Jamel Herring, and so, in what we may say may come as a little bias in that sense, but in reality, you have to look at the whole picture of this when it comes to somebody like Jamel Herring. Jamel Herring right now, yeah, it's probably still considered the underdog in this fight, given how his career went. He had some losses, and the situation with the PBC and the Broner camp didn't work out. He wound up walking away, going in to Top Rank, not really expecting much. Ultimately, wound up winning a title. But ever since then, he's been somewhat of the underdog at each one of his fights. Should we mention how much people were talking about Carl Frampton more than he was when they fought? And you go from that side and you go to Shakur Stevenson, which is one of, like I said, the long line of Olympic fighters, a great Olympic pedigree. Jamel also, like I said, is an Olympian as well. But Shakur has had a little bit more of a pedigree in the Olympic Games. That's been a template of a lot of top ranked fighters. And to be honest, that's one of the things that Top Rank has been trying to do, particularly since Floyd Mayweather left them and bought his contract out. They've been trying to prove to a lot of the world that they're able to build an African American fighter and able to build his base in that front. Shakur does not seem to be going well in that area because he has hand speed, he has great footwork, he has good instincts, but he's very, very passive right now. And when it comes to the fights into it, and one of the things that gets you a lot of popularity, let's face it, one of the reasons why Tank Davis is going to be fighting again in the pay-per-view, it brings excitement, it brings the knockouts, bring a little bit of a killer instinct. Shakur doesn't seem to have that. And the lead up to this fight, where he's been trying somewhat in vain to clown Herring, whether it's in his training camp or facility, or with him eating at a restaurant trying to pull a Shannon Briggs, it doesn't look good on him.
Can't do that with a Marine who's actually been in war.
Yeah, that's another thing. You cannot do that with somebody that has had at least 2 tours,
right,
in Iraq. Like that is not gonna shake somebody in that area. And when you have that, along with what you mentioned, Mike, that insanity that is the purse breakdown that came out when this fight was not even made yet. shows you in the position that Shakur technically is in, but I'll say it, probably doesn't deserve to be in right now. And I think that's probably play a factor into it. Herring does really, really well when there is a chip on his shoulder. And he does have a very, very large chip on his shoulder for this fight. And not to mention the fact that he also may be looking to move up if he can't get the fight with Oscar Valdez. So there's that factor into it. So, like I said, imagine somebody of Jamel Herring's caliber joining that crowded lightweight field. So there's a lot of factors into it. I honestly think that Herring will probably be able to outbox Shakur because he's disciplined enough to do it. And he does have advantages, I think, when it comes to height and reach. So it may not look as one-sided as probably you would see like 119, 110 scorecards you see, but it'll probably be a decent schooling by Mr. Herring of one Mr. Stevenson, and it might be one that he will benefit from.
Stevenson has Whitaker like skill, Whitaker like defense. We talk. Does he have Whitaker mean streak? Does he have Whitaker tough gene? Right. I don't have that. In fact, I think he's the quicker fighter than Herring. He may have more overall talent than Herring. But if he doesn't have the toughness, the overall will of Herring, he's going to be in trouble. Because one thing you can say about Herring, he's in shape, right? And he's going to be there all 12 rounds. And if he brings the fight to Shakur, being able to put some hurt on him early, um, I want to see how he's going to fare. I think in this fight, this is going to be his real, true test. The onus is on him, not on the champ. The onus is on him because he's the one with the reputation. He's the one that's being talked about being a potential great, to be a potential pound for pound a fighter moving forward. All the chips in many ways are in Herring's hand. He has nothing really to lose. He can go in there and fight free, right? Quote unquote, and just let all things go. Um, I'm not going to pick a winner here, because in part because we've had private conversations with Herring, right? I don't want to come off as biased. I want to stay objective as I can, but I'm really looking forward to the fight. I think Herring has it in him to really test Stevenson, Shakur Stevenson. I want to see how the kid reacts. I really want to see how the kid reacts, particularly if he gets hit. Um, any other keys, thoughts, observations before we begin to sign things off, Daniel?
The main thing to probably look when it comes to Shakur is he gonna have, like I said, that mean streak? That's sure. If is he gonna be able to go forward to be the fourth fighter with Herring? Because one of the weaknesses that Herring has is he doesn't fight particularly well off the back foot a lot of times. So that may be the best way for Shakur to actually negate some of the advantages that Herring may have and highlight some of his.
Right, and I think we're start going to start shutting the show down. On that note, I want to thank everybody who joined us um, in the live chat here. I want to thank Olaf. I want to thank Raphael. I want to thank Ivan for their comments and their questions. Again, as I said during the show, if you like what you've heard, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Please do us a favor and follow us on iTunes, Spotify, other podcast platforms, Anchor. Um, yeah, I'll go to you, Daniel. First of all, I want to give Gail's information with those folks, those who was asking about her why she wasn't here again. She had a prior engagement. Hope to have her back on the next episode. If you want to talk boxing, um, media, because she does teach me on the side, or if you want to check her out on a kind of semi-weekly basis on TMZ Live. You can check her out on Twitter, PR Pro San Diego, PR Pro San Diego. You can also check out her writings. She writes for Communities Digital News. She also writes for nyfights.com. I'll go to you, Daniel. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk wrestling, pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to Miami Heat. Um, Given this time, this is the day, this is the opening 2 days, the opening week of the NBA season. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Rawkuz99, RAWKUZ99. Like I said, normally me, Joe, and Francis try to have the shows on Thursday. I will not be available tomorrow. I'll be attending my sister's wedding. Be a great occasion, but definitely
Congratulations.
no, thank you guys. But definitely kind of catch us on Sundays because yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and hopefully we finish 2021 strong because I know the summer really got hit us with a lot of cancellations, a lot of COVID delays, but hopefully we end the year on a bang.
And looking at the schedule and taking a quick view of the schedule, 2020 looks to have a strong ending, particularly when it comes to Showtime. We'll talk about those fights as we get closer to them and on future episodes. Um, if you want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is, Brother JR. I'm at Brother JR76 on Twitter. As I said, to open the show, if you want to check out anything regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is a place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. Just check throughout the page to find, you'll see links where to follow us all over social media, Twitter, IG, YouTube. Still got a Tumblr page up. Technically, still working out some issues with Facebook. They're giving me struggle there. Also, if you want to donate, Cash Me PayPal donation links on the page. Let donation be the best nation. Also, if you want to email us, you can do so. P4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. And last but certainly not least, if you're looking to get yourself right as we head into the holiday season, please check out my Beachbody coaching page. I'm an online coach for beachbody.com. Check out the link there. Again, if you're interested in Let's Build Together group challenge, the plan is to begin one, to start another one at the beginning of November. If you're interested in any of the programs on Beachbody on Demand, I listed them out before, especially for boxing heads. If you want to check out 10 rounds, I suggest you check out 10 rounds, the 6-week boxing based program. Or if you want to take advantage of the 2-week trial that runs throughout the year on Beachbody on Demand, again, check out the coaching link on Pound for Pound Boxing Report page. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Stevenson Herring. We may talk about a couple of fights on that undercard. Xander Zayas, very promising teenager. Welterweight / junior middleweight prospect is got a lot of folks excited. He's going to be fighting on that undercard. We also do a recap of Rivas and Rozicki, and we will do a review of now that Dillian Whyte and Wallin is off. We'll do a preview of Chantel Cameron. She is the WBC champion at 140 pounds. She's going to be fighting unification bout against Mary McGee, who's the IBF women's junior welterweight champion. We'll do a preview of that fight. Jamal James and Jerron Boots Dennis is going to fight on the 30th as well. So we will talk about those fights. So again, shout out to Gail. She wasn't able to make it this evening. Hope to have her on next time. Thank everybody who joined us in the chat. For Daniel of the Inscriber and for Boxing News, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 341 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good one. Good evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone.